Raina Troy Hotline.
Alicia, Michael, what's going on?
We know you have takes. We have takes.
I'm actually surprised that your rant line, rave line, whatever, isn't completely full.
Why can't we just win a game?
Can I blame Michael Castillo for this?
Can I blame Bob Connolly for this?
Could I put on a zebra shirt and just go out there? Scratch, claw, up against the wall.
Can't explain it what I'm feeling right now, guys.
I can't believe it.
Let's open up that race line. Woohoo! Oh, I can't believe USC has hired Lincoln Riley. Oh, yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to End of Troy Radio, episode 489, coming to you on Monday, June 26th. We're going to talk about the latest in USC football, including the Trojans getting a couple of big commitments, including one today, literally on Monday afternoon as we record this. We're going to talk about that and that guy, a wide receiver. So what does that mean? That we're going to talk about all about wide receivers in this episode as well. So get ready to talk about USC wide receivers, have some nostalgia and all of that and so much more. As always, you can follow us on social media. You know where to follow us on Twitter at Reign of Troy and Reign of Troy at Facebook as well. Email address reignoftroy@fanside.com. I'm your host, Mark Castillo, joining with my co-host here in the Reign of Troy studio in Los Angeles, Elisa Derritola.
Hello, everybody. We already have a question in the chat about what your hat represents today.
Yeah, this is a Cigar says, is it a Chicago Bears hat? I can't tell. No, it's the Des Moines
Demons?
Demons of some sort. It's like, minor league baseball. The Iowa Cubs did the like the Hispanic themed thing that the minor league baseball does.
The Des Moines Demons.
Yes.
They are
Des Moines.
Well, what are they currently?
The Iowa Cubs.
Oh, the Iowa Cubs. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the Des Moines Demons were.
It looks like a devil. Yeah.
Yeah, they are a now defunct minor league team.
No, it's just a temporary thing. Like for one weekend, they become like the Des Moines Demonias or whatever. I don't know.
Wikipedia is telling me that they played at Des Moines. They played at Holcomb Park from 1925 to 1937, and then 1959
well, there you go.
to
It was a
1961.
throwback to them too.
Yeah.
So there you go. Whatever.
Either way.
All of this is to say we are live on YouTube. Thanks for joining us here on YouTube. If you are in the chat, we see Darlene, we see Kenny, we see Tim in LA, Richard's here, Ram Marty's here, everybody's here. Alex is here, a bunch of people here, and if you are listening to us on Apple Podcasts, as always, you can leave us a review. On YouTube, be sure to like the stream and make sure that you're subscribed. And also, you can become a member because you get members-only content like this week. We're going to do another members-only live stream. I think we're figuring out a day to do it later this week, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. And we haven't locked it down completely yet. We're still discussing that over in Discord. And if you join and become a member of the Rot Squad for $4.99 a month through YouTube, a YouTube member, you get to join in that discussion and pick the day that we're going to have an extra bonus episode later this week, which might make up for next week because we're not having an episode next week because it is the 4th of July. And who wants to listen to a podcast on July 3rd?
I mean, I would hope everybody is too busy barbecuing and enjoying some beautiful weather wherever they are. There was a discussion in the chat about how beautiful California is right now. Southern California, Los Angeles is just peak weather. I went to brunch on Sunday morning and we were sitting outside at a table and just looking around going like, oh wow, this is lovely.
Reminds me a lot of a South Bay summer. We're in the valley, so this is nice for the valley, but it will get hot.
It's not boiling hot yet.
Yeah. Yes, but it reminds me of a South Bay summer, which I always look forward to. And this spring, I love this spring. All the June gloom and the May gloom or whatever.
And all the rain.
May gray, like I loved it, kind of. Gotta say, but the sun is finally here to stay. But we got a lot to talk about on this episode. But before we do, we need to tell you that this episode is brought to you by DraftKings. USC fans, have you signed up for DraftKings yet? Have you signed up, Alicia?
I cannot because I live in California.
Way to lead in the ad here. The point is that if you're a new user and you're not in the state of California, you have users all over the country, all over the world, you can become a new user and you can receive $150 in bonus bets instantly after following these 3 steps. Create an account, deposits, and then wager $5 on any sport. Whether your first wager wins or loses, you still receive the $150 in bonus bets. All you have to do is use the code Reign of Troy when you sign up. Reign of Troy, all one word. And the best part is using our code Reign of Troy not only gets you the bonus, but it supports the show. It helps us grow the show even further. So if you're considering signing up for DraftKings, definitely use our code Reign of Troy to maximize your first bets. This offer is available to new customers only who are 21 plus and physically present in legal gambling states. Please remember to always gamble responsibly and check the episode description for all the terms of the offer. And Alicia, you might be in California right now, but the key is it's the summer. People are vacationing, baby.
Exactly.
Next week, we're not going to have a pod because we're going to let you guys go on vacay, which means you're going to be going to these states that are, legal gambling states like Arizona and you going to the river, cross the river and then join DraftKings and put in our code. So there you go. Arizona, legal over there.
Yes.
Yeah. So
that's the solution. Everybody who's listening right now, let's road trip. Arizona, DraftKings, Reign of Troy. Let's go.
Exactly. Just let's all head to Bullhead City. So, anyways, lots to talk about here on this episode, and let's get to it and start with the news, shall we? All right, we got to start with the Trojans picking up a commitment last week from Jason Zandamela. He's a 6'3", 285-pound inside offensive lineman from Clearwater, Florida, ranked 112th in 24/7 Sports Composites. And this is one that SC beats out Oklahoma. And Bill Bedenbaugh did not get his man, but SC does.
Yes, and we will say this constantly, but when it comes to recruiting the offensive line, USC has maybe not done a great job of landing sort of national offensive line recruits. I think they've done a good job of identifying some diamond in the rough kind of talent in California, but in California, true like elite offensive line talent is hard to come by. So you have to go elsewhere, and USC maybe hasn't done the best job of stacking up like top 150 kind of guys, top 100 kind of guys. So to get Zandamela as a ranked 112th nationally in the 24/7 Sports Composite, number 6 among inside offensive linemen in this class, this is a big get to go into Florida to get him, especially to beat out an Oklahoma program that has recruited offensive line very well, that has a very, very well regarded offensive line coach in Bill Bedenbaugh, we are big fans of. But Josh Henson is out here doing work and really stocking up USC's line for future success. And the reality is that USC will not be successful in the sense of championships that the program aspires to unless they are getting elite recruits in the trenches. And this is an absolutely a big get for USC. Won't be
4-star guy.
Won't be the highest rated guy in the class, but maybe the most important in the class when it comes to the overall health of the program and its ability to sustain success.
Yeah, 100%. And being able to, we talked about it last week, and feel like we talk about it all the time now. Being able to go across the country and get those guys is pivotal, because with linemen, you don't always have those guys in California. I know that we talk about that probably too much, that there isn't elite talent. We've talked about before that even Pete Carroll kind of survived by getting offensive linemen who are mostly in California, who are 3- and 4-star guys, but would have to go out of state now and then. And SC is way more willing to go out of state right now than sort of ever before. And that's what you want to do. You want to be able to have a national brand, but still hit at home. And SC still hits at home with their newest commit, the 4-star wide receiver Ryan Pelham, who announced for the Trojans live on YouTube earlier today. He picked USC over the Oregon Ducks. 5'11", $170 out of Milliken and Long Beach, ranked the 69th recruit in the 24/7 Sports Composite for the 2024 recruiting class. And Alicia, this is a big one because it gives USC the top 2 wide receivers in the state of California, along with 4-star Xavier Jordan out of Sierra Canyon, who ranks 67th. So 67th, 69th,
Nice.
which is a nice one. And Ryan Pelham adds to the class.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it's about putting a fence around California, especially at the skill positions where, Southern California might not be competing with the South or other parts of the country in terms of producing like elite offensive line talent, but Southern California certainly spits out really, really good wide receivers and other skill position talent. So being able to lock down Ryan Pelham, USC's beaten Oregon a few times now in this recruiting cycle for guys, which is always a very good sign. And that's exactly what USC should be doing as a power. Should have been doing as a power in the Pac-12. Should be doing as a power now in the Big Ten. This is a big one, and it was very, very cute to see him on YouTube with his infant baby that was just little chubby cheeks and cute.
Yeah, we've seen commitments before with like props of some sort. I remember, wasn't there a guy who committed to Florida holding a little gator at one point?
Yes.
And here was Ryan Pelham holding his baby up, like Lion King to commit to the Trojans. So big get there. And another wide receiver, I said this gives USC the top 2 wide receivers in the state of California. I put on Twitter, death taxes and USC getting the top 2 receivers in California, because that feels like a thing, doesn't it? It feels like a thing, right?
When you said it the first time, I was like, yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Like
that's exactly. And then
I looked into it.
Yeah.
It is not a thing, apparently. It's not a thing. Not a thing. So I looked this up, and never in a million years would I ever have guessed this. But the Trojans have not signed the top 2 California wide receivers in the 24/7 Sports Composite, at least, since 2019, and have only done it 5 times since 2003. 5 times. And 2003 is really when we say that the recruiting world existed, because that's when the websites were kind of really going at that point.
Yeah.
So 5 times since 2003. Pete Carroll only did it twice. Kiffin never did it. Sark never did it. Clay Helton did it 3 times. What? What world is this?
It's wild to me that it's like, if you had told me since 2003, guess how many years USC did that, I would have at least said 10, at least. So that's
But this is the thing. This list includes a bunch of guys who either transferred, or they're guys that you just didn't think of as having the amazing career, right? Like 2019, it's Brew McCoy and Kyle Ford. Well, Brew McCoy, you can make a technicality that this is not the 5th time that USC has done it in 2019. It's really the 4th, because Brew McCoy is listed as an athlete first and foremost. Secondly, signs with SC, gets released from his LOI, then officially, I guess, sort of signs for Texas, only to transfer back to SC. But I think realistically he should be counted along with Kyle Ford, but both of those guys transferred away. 2018, it was Amon-Ra St. Brown and Devin Williams. Devin Williams, of course, transfers away to Oregon. 2016 is the only time where these 2 guys both stayed and had highly productive careers. Tyler Vaughns and Michael Pittman, 2 guys who I think we're going to talk about in our next segment when we're talking about the Mount Rushmore of USC wide receivers. Both of those guys in that discussion. So 2016, 2006. 10 years before the time that SC did before, David Osbury and Jameer Holland. Jameer Holland ended up transferring. David Osbury was one of those guys who I felt like always could have been like more productive than he was. Showed flashes, but never really was the number one guy or really the number two guy either. And then 2003 was Steve Smith was the number two. Of course, he would be the number two. Number two, Steve Smith, and the top wide receiver in 2003. The greatest recruit of all time, Whitney Lewis.
Yes, Whitney Lewis, the noted USC success story.
Yes.
Yeah,
I remember where I was when I found out that he was transferring, by the way.
Do you?
Yeah.
Where were you?
I was in the chair at Dr. Ullman's office, my orthodontist, and he was like, "So I heard that Whitney Lewis is finally transferred." I'm like, yeah. That was a moment.
I just remember coming into the USC message board scene. By the time I got onto the USC message board scene, Whitney Lewis was just the poster boy for like the greatest recruit that just absolutely just
until Lendeck came around.
Until Lendeck came around, yes, those inside and long running jokes. But I mean, it also just goes to show that recruiting is a weird game, and you can hit on the top guys, and they cannot hit back. And as somebody as Tim in the chat said, like. And, you can have a guy like Drake London who doesn't fit the category, but is just, beyond anything that the recruiting services would have projected him as. So that's just the way things go. But with the data, with what you're working with right now as USC goes, like, yeah, you got to land the top two receivers in the class if they're the guys that you want, and in California. So, yeah, big get. I also wanted to add that just to go back a little bit to the prior recruit we were talking about, Jason Vandamella. My favorite little tidbit about him is he's a former rugby player.
There you go.
He's a rugby guy. Yeah. That's some toughness there that I like to.
So you can get in the scrum.
Get in the scrum, yeah.
And be a prop. Remember, I used DraftKings at account creation.
Yes.
Anyways, let's talk about the other new USC news. This one, of course, huge news. Huge news. USC is no longer in the top 5 all time in terms of vacated wins. That's right. The Trojans now rank number 6 because LSU got sanctioned by the NCAA last week. Got sanctioned 37 wins. We're wiped away 37 from 2012 to 2015 due to playing an ineligible offensive lineman, Vidal Alexander. 37. That's a hell of a lot. I think about, like, I feel bad for their SID department that has to go through their media guide and put all the notations like SC had to do back in the day.
And those notations are the biggest pain in the butt when you're trying to do research and put together.
No one can agree how many wins
it's
things. It's like the draft picks thing.
It's so the draft picks thing is an absolute mess. I hope not so accounting. Well, I guess
you're like,
guys,
Biden is 46, but actually he's the 45th. But he's the 46th. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, do you do it by bodies or do you do it by tenures?
I don't know. Like, it's weird.
Either way, this just goes to show that vacating wins is real dumb, and the NCAA remains the most just silly, unserious organization that's out there. Vandal Alexander who was the ineligible offensive lineman, played for LSU from 2012 to 2015, and they're just now getting around to penalizing LSU for his ineligibility in an era when players are getting paid through name, image, and likeness, in an era when players are transferring with free transfers and all that kind of stuff. Like, the NCAA is negotiating infractions from a decade ago. It is absolutely the stupidest thing, and vacating wins is the stupidest punishment. And I think it's all very, very dumb.
Can you imagine being busted for having a joint in your pocket in 2023 because you had one in your pocket
in 2015.
Yeah, like that would
before
be
it was
insane. Like,
legal.
that,
I
like,
don't know when
whenever
marijuana was made. I don't even remember when marijuana was made illegal.
But you know what I mean?
But
Like,
it's a good point.
Like,
Yes.
that doesn't happen in. we don't have post facto, like, at least we shouldn't. Like that's insane, right? Like, but either way, the important part is SC no longer in the top 5. This according to vacated wins rankings, which was on Reddit. Of course, a user named an Angry Panda 1 who had Alabama flair would post this. LSU now top of the list in vacated wins with 37. Ole Miss number 2, 33. Alabama is number 2. Tied with Notre Dame at number 3. North Carolina 16 vacated wins at number 5. SC is 14th. The list rounds out all the way down to 13th, which is Georgia Tech, who's only had one vacated win for Georgia Tech.
Correct my memory here. Did Penn State have wins vacated and then reapplied? I can't remember.
Did they have actually wins vacated? I don't
can't remember. I know that was discussed. It just popped in my head. It also remember. Is funny that like Notre Dame outranks USC on this front. I just think that's funny. You know, there's my USC flair coming into account.
What
also,
are people
this
talking
whole
about
list,
in your Notre Dame circles?
My Notre Dame
your
circles,
Notre Dame alum circles.
Yeah, they'd be shocked to hear that. I just think this whole list is dumb. None of these vacated wins are meaningful in any sense.
Yeah.
Tim in LA is saying he's pretty sure Penn State had the wins vacated and then NCAA backtracked and gave them the wins back. Which just goes to show how stupid of a penalty. Like literally the only people punished by that penalty are people in the media who are trying to put together records.
Right.
Like that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. So there you go. Anyways, this episode, if you're watching on YouTube, right above us, it says the best wide receivers. The best receivers. If you're watching on YouTube, the thumbnail said best receiver, ? Which means this is the episode in which we do our Mount Rushmore of wide receivers. Alicia, I'm curious how you want to do this because we talked about this a little inside baseball here when we're putting together the rundown. How are we going to discuss Mount Rushmore? So are they better if we collectively decide one, or is it better if we each have one? Maybe we each have one and then decide together one where we have to compromise.
Yeah, I was going to say
it'll be like a marriage exercise.
Por qué no los dos?
Sure.
Yeah, it's a marriage exercise. We have to agree on a Rushmore.
It could. You never know. It could be. So okay. First of all, how do you decide? What is your criteria for a Mount Rushmore of wide receivers?
Okay.
What's your baseline?
Here is my philosophy on Rushmore / just the Rushmore concept. Right.
Okay.
Mount Rushmore is not a collection of the 4 greatest presidents, and maybe I could be wrong, but I don't know that was even like necessarily the intention of it. Like these are the greatest presidents.
You besmirching Teddy right now?
Yes, apparently I am.
We've talked way too much about presidents on this episode.
Yes.
By the way.
So to me, a Rushmore differentiates itself from a like top 10 list in that you take historical significance into account.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why my Rushmore of wide receivers would vary greatly from my like top 5 USC wide receivers of all time.
There's only 4.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like,
I got you,
like it's not a top 4. Yeah. I mean, we round up to like a top 5.
Right.
So I think the big thing is historical weight comes into play a little bit more. Sort of like in that vein, the importance to the program. I think that there's a sense to me that the best way to do a Rushmore is to hit on different generations of a thing, because they're important in their own ways. So it's almost like create 4 blocks that you need to have represented, and then fill one for each spot would be the way that I personally would philosophize about this.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you these are the icons.
Yeah.
And your icons can be the greatest players of all time, but sometimes they aren't, right? Like a lot of times you might have a favorite, and your favorite doesn't necessarily mean the best, right?
Yes,
Like those
exactly.
are sort of different superlatives, right? So I think when we talk about receivers, I'm just going to throw some names out here of guys who I think would be in the discussion. So if we're talking older generation, I think you can make an argument for someone like Gifford. Although Gifford played a bunch of different positions, I never know what the hell you want to call Gifford. Frank Gifford. Is he a wide receiver? Is he a running back? Is he a punter? Is he a quarterback? I don't know. I mean, he was all of those things. So Gifford is a name that you can throw out there for sure. I think you can put Lynn Swann. Lynn Swann was. We've talked about it before on both on the podcast and back when we were writing on Redditor.com about the first modern USC wide receiver.
Yeah.
And when it depends what you mean by modern, because if you mean by modern as in like they wore a plastic helmet or whatever helmets are made of now,
Yeah.
and had a face mask and all those things, then the first modern great receiver is Lynn Swann. But if you talk about modernity as in the game that is being played today, then the first modern receiver is Curtis Conway. And Curtis Conway deserves to be on this list, along with Keyshawn Johnson, Johnny Morton. Really, those two, Conway and Morton, probably Morton more so. Now that I think about it, led into Keyshawn, which led into R.J. Soward, which led into Kareem Kelly, and then led into all of the guys in the Pete Carroll era. Your Dwayne Jarrett's, your Mike Williams, your Dwayne Jarrett's, your Steve Smiths, Damian Williams, so on. So I think that if you're talking about like the bastion idea of like these guys are icons in being trailblazers for USC football, I think you take an old guy, and that's Lynn Swann. I think you take one of those early modern guys, and that's for me. As much as it probably should be more than I think about it, Johnny Morton, I think you also have to go with popularity here. And I think that's Keyshawn. And then I think you include the best of all time. And then I think that is a very interesting debate on who the best of all time is. For me, that will always be Mike Williams. And then your fourth guy is who the hell else do you think it could be? Like it's a huge argument between Robert Woods, Marquise Lee, Drake London. You can go back to Conway and Morton. You can throw in like Eric Affolter in there as sort of before Johnny Morton and all those guys. Like I don't know. I think it's tough.
Okay, I think
Tim in the chat says JJ, John Jackson.
I think one of the ways to do this is just to put all of our cards on the table and name all of the receivers. And someone in the chat said like, good luck with this because I tried to do it in my head and this is really hard. It is really hard, and part of the problem it's really hard is that while we're trying to categorize these sort of positions, the modern game has brought its own. You could do a modern Rushmore for USC and leave guys out,
especially when you look at production. Because
yes, I was gonna do the top 10 USC wide receivers in career receiving yards.
Yeah,
Marquise Lee, Johnny Morton, Dwayne Jarrett, Kareem Kelly, Juju Smith-Schuster, Steve Smith, Kerry Colbert, Robert Woods, Tyler Vaughns, and Keyshawn Johnson. Like
right.
Johnny Morton is the outlier there as somebody who was in the early 90s. Like everybody else is and Keyshawn, I guess, but like everybody else, there's just like the explosion in this century of guys who have to be considered, to the point where like it's ridiculous that Dwayne Jarrett caught 41 touchdown passes for USC. 41, and I wouldn't have him on my modern Rushmore. Like
that's the crazy part. He has the touchdown record. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I wouldn't, and like that seems unfair. But then like it seems unfair that I think Juju misses out on a lot of these these sort of conversations when you factor in like the guys that were not even
peak of his powers. Who was better, Juju, Pittman, or Drake London?
I mean, that's the real question. Is like I think Drake could have made it really easy for us if he hadn't gotten injured. But like
I think peak
Marquise,
of their powers, Drake London's better than those other.
that's what I'm saying. Like I think Drake London to me is the most dominant wide receiver that I've ever seen play at USC.
Mhm.
The context of his career is a little bit different than some other guys who I think you could give that title to, but Drake just reached a different level. And like I said, his injury makes it harder on us because if he hadn't gotten injured, like Drake was gonna gonna set USC records, single season records, and make a run at Marquise's title records and on all of those kinds of things. So um, it's wild to have to consider that you have to go all the way down to 29th to find Lynn Swann in USC's career receiving chart.
Yeah, and he's 34th in catches.
Yeah, and in receiving yards. And like, so how do you differentiate these things? And something that Donald in the chat brings up is that Marquise Lee won the Biletnikoff Award, and I think you have to take that into account. I was looking at for Lynn Swann specifically, I was looking at USC's media guide to sort of look at All Americans, and Lynn Swann was a consensus, like he was considered the best wide receiver in college football in 1973. He was a consensus All-American. Like USC had not had a modern wide receiver with that kind of
award
acclaim.
didn't exist then, yeah.
Yeah, like I think USC had tight ends who had national acclaim to that degree, but never a something that more closely resembled. USC actually lists him as a flanker in the media guide, which is funny. He's not a wide receiver still because again, the position was sort of changing, but that's the same issue you have with the tight ends and like Hal Bedsole, and like he wasn't a tight end, he was a right end, and what is that? Yeah, how do you translate like that? Those kinds of things.
The flanker thing is like tailback and halfback. Like it's flanker is very clearly just a receiver.
Yes,
it's a type of receiver.
But
it's less confusing than a right end.
Yes, but before Lynn Swann, what you had was right ends and left ends and ends and
the end could be a receiver or a tight end.
Yeah, it's hard to sort of differentiate those guys. And I agree with you. Like Gifford is a special case. I think I would disqualify Gifford because to me he more closely resembles, if you had to put him in a category, I think you put him in like a back, like a running back, a sort of a backfield halfback,
playmaker. You know what he is? Gifford belongs in
the Adoree Jackson Rushmore of.
No, I was gonna say he belongs on the like NFL success for the the Trojan.
Yes.
Mount Rushmore. You put Gifford on there.
And that's a whole other thing that I think factors in with Lynn Swann, because what Lynn Swann went on to do in the NFL as a receiver in terms of sort of Super Bowl success and his place in NFL history bolsters his argument for being involved in a USC in the conversation to be on Mount Rushmore, because again, he was the first biggest success story as far as like a pure wide receiver goes from USC. And then he also built up the legacy of USC pro success as well, which I don't want to lean heavily on necessarily.
No,
but you can't deny the importance of that too for USC as like a football factory. Which is why, like, I might argue for like Lynn Swann over Curtis Conway or over Johnny Morton.
The more I think about it, I say Curtis Conway. Curtis Conway was there at the same time as Johnny Morton, but Johnny Morton is like, in terms of talent, I think they're very similar, right?
Yeah, Johnny Morton's second on USC's.
In terms of career, it's definitely Johnny Morton.
Yeah.
Now, to go back to the real Mount Rushmore, it's Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, and Teddy Roosevelt. And so the idea is, you have the iconic founding father type guys. And then you have a pivotal figure at that time, someone like, in history, and then you have, which would be Lincoln, and then you have like more the modern guy in Roosevelt. And I think that when you look at for how this discussion goes, I think if you have the overall Mount Rushmore of USC wide receivers, I think you have to have an old guy in here.
Yeah.
And I think it just has to be Swan. And like, yes, I like how many people our age or younger remember Swan from the catch he had in the Super Bowl against the Cowboys? The answer is none, because I'm the only weirdo that would watch the Super Bowl highlight NFL films things at 2:30 in the afternoon on ESPN Classic when I was 9 years old. So it's just me, but like, I think people think of Lynn Swan now, and the first thing they think of is like, the Lane Helton, re-signing as a GM, and like as an AD, and like that should have no bearing here. As a football player, he belongs on this sort of like founding father of the modern wide receiver.
I like that is just declaring Lynn Swan as the founding father of the modern USC wide receiver and put him on the Rushmore.
Yeah. Okay. So that's one spot. Then we have to go to
can we go in the
other three?
Can we go in the completely other direction?
Sure.
And just you can disagree with me on this,
Okay.
but I don't think you should, and I don't think anyone should. And based on the chat, I think most people would agree as well. Marquise Lee is on this. There are no ifs, ands, or buts. Marquise Lee is on this. That's it.
Okay. He won the Biletnikoff, like you said.
He won the Biletnikoff.
I don't know that it's completely fair.
He owns the USC records. His name is on top of all of the USC the major USC receiving records. He had the single greatest performance by a Trojan receiver in a single game.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that there can't. You could debate Marquise Lee if you were doing a top 5, where in the top 5 he sits. I think you could debate, but Marquise Lee in a Rushmore scenario, he's just among the 4, and there's no debate about that.
I think that is fair. I will give you that. I agree. Part of that, he was not only a Biletnikoff winner, but he finished 4th or 5th in the Heisman that year.
Yeah.
So yes, I think we can put him on for that, and that gives us 2 spots there. My pushback to Marquise Lee is, at the time, I thought Marquise Lee was like the greatest thing since sliced bread, and I still do. But I think if you compare, like, this isn't a knock on Marquise Lee. I think this is a testament to what the game is like right now. Every time we see a great USC receiver, you're like, Mike Williams. Mike Williams is my favorite USC receiver of all time, right? I'm like, what he's doing is never going to be matched. And in a lot of ways, it never will be, because he did it as a freshman and a sophomore, but that's beside the point. We'll talk about him in a couple minutes. Dwayne Jarrett came by and said, what? And then broke all his records, right? Robert Woods had an incredible season in 2011, broke the Pac-12 record for catches, did all these things. Marquise Lee comes back the next year, breaks his records. Then you look at it and...
Yeah, but that was now 10 years ago. And in 10 years, no one has even come close to Marquise.
Drake London would have smashed the record.
Yes, and that's why I say Drake would have made it really easy for us if he had not gotten injured. But he did, and we can't...
We can gatekeep Drake London because he didn't win the Biletnikoff, but that's kind of messed up.
But he would have if he had been healthy that season.
Yes,
in my opinion.
Yes, which, by the way, it would have been. What's the fantasy world in which he wins the Biletnikoff and not Jordan Addison? Does like,
yeah?
How is SC still giving Jordan Addison the number 3 if he's not the Biletnikoff winner? Like, I don't know. That's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. But the point is, like, if Marquise Lee is surely on because he won the Biletnikoff, I think we can do that because he's the only winner. But if there was 2, I don't think I don't think you can put 2 of them on because you're running out of spots.
That's fair, but I will say, like, it would have taken Drake London winning the Biletnikoff and putting in like a 1,700-yard season. I mean, like,
he was on pace for that.
Yes, he was, but like, that's the struggle. Marquise Lee too. Like,
can I just share an inside baseball thing here?
Mm-hmm.
So I literally have a spreadsheet this is very bad. I shouldn't admit this. I was making this spreadsheet in the middle of the Arizona game.
Yes, I remember.
When Drake London got hurt. And so the spreadsheet I had put in all the rankings for catches and yards on a season list and everything. And so that way I could track Drake London and update it every quarter and be able to tweet out stats about Drake London and stuff. And looking at this, so at the time, which I don't think anyone passed him in 22 or certainly no one passed him last year with more catches or yards or anything. He was in terms of catch rank, he was 9th on the list, tied with Johnny Morton. He played 8 games. He would have played 4 more games in that season. He was averaging 11 catches per game, so that would have been 44. 88 plus 44 is 132. That would have been 14 more catches than Marquise Lee.
So here's where
And Marquise Lee played more games.
This is why this is very difficult, because if we're going to categorize the 4 that we're putting in, Lynn Swann, godfather of the modern USC wide receiver.
Yeah.
Marquise Lee, stat giant.
Yeah.
Drake London, to me, he would have been a stat giant, but he got injured.
Yes.
I would still argue, and I don't know that I'm going to win this argument because there are other guys that we'd have to factor in here, but I would still argue it. I put him on the Rushmore, regardless of the Marquise Lee thing, as dominant, just big D dominant.
Let's do this. We Swann fully etched. He's already in the thing.
Yeah.
Lee fully etched, already in the things.
Yeah.
We've drawn preliminary plans for Drake London, but I think Drake London would go in the category of peak of his powers best, independent of anything else. And to me, if that's what the category is, he's got 3 opponents he's got to beat.
Yes.
Mike Williams,
Mm-hmm.
Keyshawn Johnson,
yes,
and Robert Woods.
Yes.
So let's discuss this. Mike Williams, for me, pound for pound, the greatest USC wide receiver of all time. I get it. Keyshawn Johnson has literally talked about a ranking that I did on a podcast, and in the intro music, there's Keyshawn Johnson mentioning me. Upset that Mike Williams was ranked ahead of him in this ranking. But there's a reason for that. Mike Williams had production that was eerily similar to Keyshawn Johnson. Both played 2 years. Mike Williams, 176 catches, 25.79 in terms of yards. Keyshawn Johnson, 168 catches, 27.96 in terms of yards. Mike Williams, 30 touchdowns. Keyshawn Johnson, 16. Keyshawn's argument is Mike Williams had 2 Heisman winners throwing him passes, and Keyshawn Johnson had Brad Otten and Kyle Waholtz. And I will give him that. But at the same time, Mike Williams was a 3-star receiver out of Florida who did this as a true freshman and a true sophomore who never got the luxury of playing as a junior because he tested a rule and didn't get re-eligible, even though the NCAA screwed him and should have allowed him to come back in 2003. Keyshawn Johnson is a JUCO transfer. Not to take anything away from that at all, but he was playing as a junior and a senior, and older. Yes, it's his only 2 years in college football as well, but he wasn't the raw talent that Mike Williams was. And again, Mike Williams had 30 touchdowns to Keyshawn Johnson 16, and at the time, those 30 touchdowns were better than what Johnny Morton did in 4 years, and he had the career record. So, Mike Williams is the guy. He's got the greatest catch of all time, the one-hander against Oregon State.
You want to know
in the pour some sugar on me game?
You want to know my, I think, where the tiebreaker really works against Mike Williams?
What? The titles? Because I don't care about titles.
No. Keyshawn had a long NFL career. He was a Pro Bowler. and Mike Williams flamed out. And that works really, really hard against Mike Williams.
In terms of star power, yes.
Yeah.
I hear you.
I think it would be very, very, if you gave Mike Williams Keyshawn's pro career, I don't know that it would even be a question that Mike Williams would be just up there as one of the all-time like college football greats.
Right.
I think he gets forgotten. And this happens a lot in
there's
college
been like
because
8 different Mike Williamses. And
I mean, the fact that his name is the most generic name you could possibly get short of John Smith.
I mean, there's a Steve Smith on this list.
I mean, Steve Smiths are also an issue. Speaking of overlooked wide receivers.
Yes. Well, okay, let's okay, so we talked about Mike Williams. For me, Mike Williams is ahead of Drake London and ahead of Keyshawn on those 3.
Can I just say, like, I think your mileage varies between the two. I am perfectly fine if you told me 1 versus 1, pick one. I think I think you could choose Mike Williams and I would not argue too much with you. And you could choose Keyshawn Johnson. I think you would be perfectly right as well. I don't know that there's a right answer unless you're factoring in the NFL success.
Well, I think the right answer is Por qué no los dos, but we will get to that in a minute.
Well, ¿por qué no los dos? Because if you put both of them in, now you're asking me to leave out one of Drake London or Robert Woods, and I will not stand for that.
Okay. So
that's por qué.
Okay, so this is going to get good then, because I say Por qué no los dos because I think Mike Williams absolutely belongs to be in here. And I think Keyshawn Johnson, because of everything he did, and because of the whole aura about him, the star powerness and all that stuff, belongs in here as well. Which, if we're including Swan and Lee on sort of like de facto like founding father and award winner criteria, then I have no more room for Drake London, unfortunately. I have no room for Robert Woods, unfortunately. No room for Steve Smith. No room for for Juju Smith-Schuster, and no room for one of my all-time favorites as a kid, R.J. Sauer.
Yeah. Also, Dwayne Jarrett is suffering from.
I feel bad for Dwayne Jarrett.
Dwayne Jarrett's suffering from the same problem that Mike Williams, because if Dwayne Jarrett had a good NFL career, we would talk about him very differently.
Yes, but also like I don't know how to say this without it looking like a knock on Dwayne Jarrett, and it's not, because Mike Williams was astronomically amazing. The problem with Dwayne Jarrett and Mike Williams is that they played essentially the same role. They were kind of the same player. And Mike Williams was twice as good as Dwayne Jarrett. And while Mike Williams was so good that Dwayne Jarrett could be half as good and still dominant. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I don't want to say anything against Dwayne Jarrett.
I'm not arguing for Dwayne Jarrett on the Rushmore for the record. I just also think that like NFL
and the fact that Dwayne Jarrett is like your 6th greatest receiver in all time and he had 40 something touchdowns.
Yeah.
Is incredible.
Pretty stupid.
Like that's the ultimate basking in riches kind of thing the SC has here.
Yes.
So okay. So Mike Williams, Keyshawn Johnson, Mike Williams, Keyshawn Johnson, Robert Woods, and Drake London. Juju and Michael Pittman. There's 6 guys. You got to pick 2 to put on the thing. Who are you putting? Steve Smith. 7 guys. You got to pick 2. Who you putting in?
I'm going with I'll go Keyshawn, and I will go as much as it pains me, I'm going to remove Drake London from contention because he is on the hypothetical Rotmore of everything. If he had been healthy, he would have been.
Mark Sanchez doesn't really work there.
Not quite, but I get what you're saying. Like, I think he would have shattered everything, but he didn't. He had one 1,000-yard season, and it was in 8 games, and it was amazing, and he would have gone on to amazing things, but he didn't, and so you can't.
If this was strictly the eye test, Drake
Yeah.
London is on this.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, these kind of things are not strictly the eye test.
Yes. So in that sense, I'm going to use Robert Woods as a bridge.
Okay. So who kicking out, Mike Williams or Keyshawn?
I've got Keyshawn.
And no Mike Williams?
To me, they're interchangeable. I like it's Lynn Swann, Marquise Lee, one of Mike Williams or Keyshawn, whoever you want, and then it's Robert Woods, because Robert Woods to me sort of represents the best of like my OG wide receiver love, Steve Smith.
Okay.
He represents a sort of statistical.
I'm getting the wrecking ball. We're taking Lynn Swann out. If you are going to say that Mike Williams cannot be on here because Robert Woods needs to, well, then I will sacrifice Lynn Swann. We'll wrecking ball him out of here, because Mike Williams belongs on this damn Mount Rodmore. He does. And I get that Lynn Swann does. And this is the limitations of only having 4. But I will not stand for not having Mike Williams.
Okay.
So if you want Robert Woods on there, that's fine. I'm not going to argue against this. He was incredible. This is all splitting hairs at this point. But which at that point, then
you know what?
Keyshawn becomes the founding father guy.
No.
He's the old guy. What, are you going to build a 5th head on this thing?
I will concede that the Rotmore is Lynn Swann, Marquise Lee, Mike Williams, and Keyshawn Johnson. If we're getting rid of Lynn Swann, then I'm gonna throw the hypothetical greatest ever in there with Drake London. But I think when you look at pure dominance, Mike Williams and Keyshawn Johnson both had a level of sustained success that that I don't think that Robert Woods is also sort of in a hypothetical mode, because he would have had significantly better numbers if he wasn't dealing with the injuries that he was dealing with himself.
Mm-hmm. Also, if these guys would have had a senior season, which they stayed.
Yes. So
Keyshawn Johnson stayed for his senior season.
But Keyshawn only had 2 years. I mean, I get what you're saying, but also it was still within.
Right. But Johnny Morton had all 4 years. Yeah. And, obviously he only had, Rob Johnson for part of that, but still. Johnny
Morton could really make the argument that if we get rid of Lynn Swann, we got to put Johnny Morton in as the bridge, as sort of the bridge player. But I still say I think it's got to. When it boils down, I think it has to be Lynn Swann, Marquise Lee, Mike Williams, and Keyshawn.
I'm glad you agree.
I think I will concede that, because I think any other constitution of this involves too many, as Richard in the chat said, it involves focusing too much on what they could have done rather than what they did do.
So the way I look at it, you should have an old guy. You want like different eras involved, right? Lynn Swann is your old player. Whoever you want to put in there, Gifford, Swan, you can throw in any of the older, J.K. McKay. I don't know. You can throw any of the older receivers in there, right? Keyshawn is in the era of Johnny Morton. So he beats out Johnny Morton. Mike Williams beats out Dwayne Jarrett in the Pete Carroll era. Mm-hmm. And Marquise Lee
represents the modern, the contemporary.
Yes, represents the contemporary guys, the post-Carroll era.
Yes.
So he beats out Juju and Pittman and Drake and Amon-Ra and all those guys.
Yes.
So I think that's fair. Anyways, let us know your thoughts. Your Mount Rushmore of USC wide receivers. Your Mount Rotmore. Send us your emails, reignoftroy@fanside.com. Everybody in the chat, do you agree with us? Swan, Lee, Williams, Johnson? I know that there's been talking here of who should be what. Tim says, imagine a healthy Drake London. Yeah, that would be crazy. Richard, said that you got to focus on what people have done and not what they hypothetically could have done. Anyways, let us know your thoughts in the emails and the comments and all those things. But let's wrap this thing up with a quick mailbag, and then we'll take her home, eh?
You've got mail.
All right, let's start with a Discord message, which we got 2 off the wall questions from LA Fred. First one: you have to become a home burglar, but you only steal things that will inconvenience or annoy your victim. What are your top theft items? Mine would be the TV remote controls.
That's
a really good one.
That's the correct answer, because that's my biggest annoyance on a daily basis, because my
it's a good one.
my spouse doesn't do a good job of putting the remote in a consistent place. So every morning I go out and have to go.
Well, we did have a
for
tile
it.
stuck on it at some point, but it fell off.
Yeah.
Stopped working.
Yeah, a tile that was connected to your phone for you to page it, which I couldn't do if you were asleep. That's fine. Yeah.
I think there's a.
I think the answer is probably the remote controls. I think something like half of every pair of shoes, or all the towels, like all the bath towels.
So this needs to not be overly mean, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So toilet paper, I can't say toilet paper. Is that too vile?
That is psychotic. That's too vile.
Because that's what my first thought was.
Yeah. No,
you steal all of someone's toilet paper, like that is diabolical.
All of the bath towels in the house, I think, is in the same vein, but not as cruel.
Good.
Yeah.
And you're like waddling over to the paper towel rack.
Exactly.
In the kitchen.
Using
butt
paper
ass
towels.
naked. Yeah.
know.
Tim says all the spare batteries. That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Okay. LA's Fred's second question with Summer here. What are your top favorite summer fruits, and what's on the bottom?
Okay.
Least favorite.
Favorite is mangoes, which I haven't had yet this year, but I always look forward to mangoes. Cherries, although I am now traumatized and may never purchase cherries
because you fed
ever
our dog
again.
Jessie cherries. Yeah.
I did not feed her cherries. She ate the pits and scared the living bejesus out of me.
Yeah,
but I do love cherries.
There's cyanide in there.
Like, there is, though.
Yeah. Anyways, if you're watching here on
YouTube,
you can
she's
see her behind.
She's sleeping. I swear.
She's breathing.
Mangoes, cherries, a good watermelon on a summer day. You can't go wrong. What's on the bottom? I was just having this debate with my family members, because one of my family members tried to claim that apples are the worst fruit, which I think is just I could not agree. But we did get into talking about the problem with fruits. I like most fruits, with the exception, like, I would put grapefruits at the bottom, because they're not what I'm looking for in a fruit in terms of sweetness. But like, one of the problems with fruits is that every fruit has a range, and the range is very different. So like honeydew melon, best fruit ever when you're in that top.
Honeydew sucks.
The honeydew melon, when you get a good one, is just like out of this world. Cantaloupes, out of this world when they're in the. But like 75% of the honeydew melon or cantaloupes that you eat are mediocre to bad.
Do you ever just say honeydew, or do you always say honeydew melon?
I do say honeydew melon every time.
Like the full government name?
Honeydew melon.
Okay.
Yeah. So like, that's a problem. I was having like strawberries. Elite strawberries, elite. But,
never had a bad strawberry.
But there are strawberries, they're just like, okay, this is really tart. This isn't doing it for me.
Those are still good.
It's disappointing.
Strawberries are like pizza. There's not a bad version.
Yeah. I like most fruits is what the summation of this is. But
top one for me, strawberries for sure. Even though it's not really a summer fruit, it's more of a spring fruit. Summer fruit.
In the modern world, all fruit is year round.
Let's go with watermelon or a good cantaloupe. Cantaloupe, very volatile. Okay. Worst fruits. I am gonna say pineapple.
Oh, well, that's a wrong answer. I love pineapple.
Horrible. Honeydew, also absolutely vile. Next question comes from Kenny. Do you think the Pac-12 has a media deal by Pac-12 Media Day in 3.5 weeks?
I swear every week for the last 4 weeks, there's been a report from somebody saying it's soon. Yes, I do think they will have one in place by Media Day.
They have to.
They
right?
have to, but will it be a good one? No.
Yeah, it's almost a weird deadline because what does Kliavkov get up there and say if they don't?
Yeah, if they don't have it,
yikes.
jeez.
Yeah. Absolutely, yikes. Next question comes from Cameron with the new football facility being built. What are they going to do with the Trojan sword statue that you walk by Howard Jones Field with? It's a good question. Wait a minute, I didn't even think about it. Not only that, but the whole walk with all the tiles.
Mm-hmm.
Like that,
with the All-American plaques?
Yeah, the All-American plaques.
Yeah.
That whole thing was designed because it was how the players walk. They probably move that. Yeah, they probably move them. They probably take the plaques down and move them. Because
they have to move them.
The way that they might keep it, maybe. I mean,
I think they have to move them
because they probably have to move them. The only thing is that in the way the thing was written, it made it sound like there was not going to be a walkout area. There was just because the in terms, at least not like a long tunnel like that. Sure, there might be of some sort that could work, and there might still be a place to put them. But yeah, I think it would make sense to move it. And the sword, I think it would make sense to have that out there, right along the edge of the facility as you get onto the field. Yeah, you got to move it. That's sweet. I'm wondering what happens to the McKay Center. Does that just? I don't know. I don't know what happens. Sean from beautiful Austin, Texas says, will there be a rot league when NCAA 24 drops out next year? Yes, absolutely.
Heck yes.
100%. And Alex says, what is SC's record for 2023? I don't know. We're going to have to discuss that in our previews coming up in August.
My preview of that record without really digging into the schedule, I'll just go 11-1.
All right. I'm torn. I'm also a big believer in record doesn't matter in side test, which I know doesn't. That's not how the national championship is determined. But in terms of how good this team is, it will not be the record. It will be the eye test for how we ultimately do that. And if you disagree, remember that 11-2 USC in 2017 had fans on Twitter asking for their coach to be fired.
Yeah.
So don't say it's not about the record. Because it isn't. Or it is about the record because it isn't. Anyways, Tim and LA says pineapple is the worst ? Be right back. Gotta unsubscribe. So this is my call for you guys.
Only half. You only need to half unsubscribe because his opinions on this don't reflect the full panel of hosts.
We've lost Tim. It rounds up. That's a whole unsubscribe, which means that if you are listening to this right now, you need to make up for Tim unsubscribing by subscribing to the show for us right here on YouTube. If you are watching us. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button as well. Especially the like button locks you in for this episode. The subscribe button locks you in forever, baby. And then you can go over to the membership join button, hit that, join for $4.99 a month. You get bonus content like we're going to have later this week, members only live show, which you won't want to miss, especially since we're taking next week off for the holidays. So join us for that in the members only side of things. Until then, we will be back on July 10th as we start to look forward to the new season. So we're looking forward to that. Leave us your reviews on Apple Podcasts as well. A big shout out to Fade Cunningham who gave us 5 stars, by the way. Thank you. We appreciate it. You guys can go listen and give us a review over there on Apple Podcasts as well. So until next time, we will see you. And have a good 4th of July. And for all of our members, we'll see you later this week.
See ya.
See ya.